We are often taught, subtly or overtly, that if a relationship ends, whether romantic, familial, or friendship, it's a sign of failure, that we must have done something wrong, that if only we had tried harder, stayed longer, given more, it could have lasted. But this mindset forgets something fundamental. People change. Life changes, and not every connection is meant to survive those changes. Some relationships are seasonal, designed not to last forever, but to serve a purpose for a time. And when that purpose is fulfilled, when the growth has happened, when the lesson has landed, the relationship may naturally fall away. That's not failure, that's evolution. We evolve through relationships. They are mirrors for our values, our wounds, and our capacity for growth. Each person who enters our lives carries something for us to learn or unlearn. Sometimes they teach us to love deeply. Sometimes they reflect a part of ourselves we need to heal. Other times they test our boundaries, showing us where we've allowed too much or held ourselves too small. But regardless of the nature of the bond, it contributes to the shaping of who we are. And part of growing is recognizing when a connection has done its job and no longer fits the version of ourselves we are becoming. This realization isn't always neat or easy. In fact, it can be painful. It can look like waking up one day and realizing that the conversations no longer nourish you, that you're walking on eggshells, that the laughter you used to share feels forced now. It can look like recognizing that staying is costing you your peace, your authenticity, or your growth. And in that moment, it's easy to panic, easy to guilt yourself for feeling the shift, easy to try to fix what no longer wants to be fixed. But here's the truth. The discomfort you feel is not a call to repair something broken. It's often a signal that you're being invited into the next chapter of your own evolution. When we begin to see endings not as signs of failure, but as thresholds into a deeper version of ourselves, we move with more grace. We stop clinging out of fear and start releasing out of wisdom. We begin to trust that our paths aren't meant to be overcrowded with people we've outgrown or who have outgrown us. That it's okay to part ways without blame, that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and the other person is to let go. This doesn't mean we devalue what we shared. On the contrary, it means we honor it for what it was. The late night talks, the hard lessons, the shared milestones, they mattered. They were real. They shaped us. And now we get to carry those memories forward without needing to drag the entire relationship with us. We can hold space for gratitude and grief at the same time. We can look back with love and still walk forward with resolve. It's important to remember, too, that other people are evolving in their own ways, on their own timelines. Sometimes someone you care about deeply may no longer align with the values you're stepping into. Maybe they still live in patterns you've worked hard to break. Maybe they no longer see you in the fullness of who you are now. Or maybe you're the one who has outgrown your old role in the relationship, the fixer, the pleaser, the one who stays silent to keep the peace. In either case, forcing a bond to stay intact when it's meant to stretch or dissolve only leads to more suffering. There's no freedom in clinging, but there is immense peace in acceptance. The narrative that forever equals success is one that needs rethinking. What if the success of a relationship isn't measured in years, but in depth? In the truth you found within it, in the strength you built because of it, in the clarity you gained when it ended? What if we stopped shaming ourselves for letting go and started celebrating ourselves for choosing peace, growth, and alignment? Of course, all of this is easier said than done. Letting go of a relationship, especially one that once felt like home, is one of the bravest things a person can do. It requires trust. Trust that the connection served its purpose. Trust that you will be okay without it. Trust that sometimes the most painful part of a relationship ending isn't just the absence of the other person. It's the absence of the future you thought you'd have with them. We grieve not only what was, but what we hoped would be. It's the loss of shared plans, late night talks, the small rituals that made life feel secure. And it's in that space of emotional vulnerability that the desire to reach back becomes strongest. The memories start to glow with a kind of soft focus, blurring the sharp edges of the pain and making it easy to second guess your decision or hold on a little longer. But part of trusting the shift in relationships is recognizing that clarity often comes in the silence after the goodbye. That space isn't empty, it's instructive. There's something sacred about distance. It reveals what closeness often conceals. When you take a step back from a connection, you begin to see the dynamics more clearly. Were your boundaries respected? Was your presence reciprocated? Were you seen, truly seen, or were you simply tolerated? These are difficult questions, but they're necessary, because without that reflective distance, it's easy to confuse habit with love and routine with intimacy. You can grow so used to dysfunction that it starts to feel like home. But growth doesn't happen in denial. It happens in discomfort, the discomfort of seeing a relationship for what it truly was rather than what you desperately wanted it to be. So much of our emotional energy gets caught up in trying to fix things, fix people, fix situations, fix ourselves, to fit into relationships that no longer fit us. But what if the real work isn't fixing, but accepting? Accepting that you can be a good person and still not be good for someone else. Accepting that some connections serve their purpose, taught their lesson, and are meant to end, not in bitterness, but in peace. That doesn't make the relationship a failure. In fact, many of the most meaningful relationships we have don't last forever, but they shape us in ways that do. There's also a kind of wisdom that comes from accepting the impermanence of relationships. It helps you hold them more gently, with less control and more curiosity. You stop demanding that they last forever and start appreciating them for what they are in the moment. You listen more closely, you give more freely, and when the time comes to part ways, you do so with less resentment and more grace. That's not detachment, it's maturity. It's the kind of emotional resilience that allows you to move through loss without losing yourself in the process. When we hold on to relationships out of fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of what it might say about us if something ends, we give away our power. We make decisions from a place of scarcity, not self-respect. And the truth is, you can't build a life rooted in peace if your relationships are rooted in fear. You have to trust that the universe is not punishing you when people leave. It's making room for something more aligned, something more healing, something that doesn't require you to bend until you break. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to walk away from someone you still love. It's hard to detach from someone whose presence once felt like home. But you must remember that love is not meant to suffocate. It's not meant to keep you small. If a connection asks you to abandon yourself to preserve it, that's not love. It's attachment. And part of trusting the shift in relationships is learning to release